Hey Amanda, can you reschedule the 4 p.m. with Nielsen? Tell them I've got a thing. A thing. That's what Carter called skipping client meetings to golf with his CrossFit buddies or stalk his ex on Instagram from the rooftop lounge. Meanwhile, I was triple checking his budget decks for errors so massive they could legally qualify as financial performance art. That 4 p.m. was supposed to finalize a 6-month rollout. I'd spent weeks prepping, hadn't even opened the shared doc, but I smiled, nodded, moved the meeting. Because that's what you do when your boss is the CEO's son and your actual job title is emotional shock absorber with Wi-Fi access. Let me make something clear before we go further. I'm not here to rant for the sake of ranting. I played the game, smiled through the BS, told myself I was learning, building capital, earning respect. 3 years of late nights, early mornings, and just one more favors. I thought I was climbing. Turns out I was just fortifying his throne. Now, before Carter's fanboys come crawling in here to defend his innovative leadership style, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and give this story a like. Because trust me, what's coming next makes succession look like a polite disagreement over brunch reservations. And unlike most of the 90% lurking here without clicking that little red button, you're going to want to be notified when karma comes knocking. Anyway, the moment I realized I'd been played, it wasn't loud. No dramatic confrontation. No HR memo. It was a Tuesday. Carter sauntered into the conference room where I'd just wrapped a quarterly update presentation, the one I wrote, formatted, rehearsed, and delivered while he was taking a phone call, translation, watching TikToks of some influencer with visible abs and zero punctuation. Our director clapped. One of the VPs nodded, impressed. Carter looked confused, like someone had just told him oatmeal had feelings. Then he grinned, leaned back in the chair I'd been sitting in not 5 seconds earlier, and said, "Wow, Amanda, you really make me look good up there. Not thanks. Not great job, just that." Like I was the human equivalent of an Instagram filter, softening the disaster of his leadership into something vaguely presentable. That promotion I'd been told was on the table, the one I'd practically written the job description for, given to a guy who spelled liaison with 3 Z to Kess and once asked if VPNs were a type of blood test. And Carter, he strutted around like he'd birthed the whole division from his perfectly moisturized forehead, started introducing me in meetings as his right hand. Once, during an internal call, he joked I was basically my emotional support animal. Everyone laughed, even me, that weird high-pitched laugh you let out when something's not funny but your mortgage is still due on the first. I'd love to say I snapped right then, that I flipped the table, quit dramatically, and left a trail of flaming post-its in my wake. But I didn't. I went back to my desk, opened Excel, highlighted cells, numb hands, hot face, cold heart. I told myself it was just another bruise, that I could survive this one too, but something cracked. Quietly, like a light bulb filament burning out in a locked room, that night I didn't go home and cry. I went home and opened a folder. Labeled it Op Plan Personal, started logging things, not revenge, not yet, just receipts, missed approvals, gaslighting and Slack threads. Carter taking credit for workflows I designed in the dark corners of Monday nights. Recordings, not secret, not illegal. Just Teams meetings where clients flat out asked me to bypass him for clarity. For weeks, I said nothing, did nothing, just cleaned up his messes and kept my face neutral. That's the thing about quiet women in loud offices, we're the ones everyone forgets are listening. But I was. Oh, I was. The office started to feel different after that. Colder, sure, but also sharper, like the air before a storm. Carter didn't notice. He was too busy Instagramming his shoes and forwarding me entire client decks with the note. Finesse this? No subject line, no greeting, and I kept smiling. Because loyalty's a funny thing, it's quiet until it isn't. The moment Carter threw me under the bus, he did it with the ease of someone tossing lint off a jacket. Yeah, I don't know why the projections are off. Amanda must have pulled an outdated model. We'll get that cleaned up. Silence. We were on a live call with Hastings Group, a $7M account hanging by dental floss and caffeine fumes, and Carter said it so casually, so damn confidently, like I was just some intern who wandered in with a broken calculator and a dream. I blinked once. Then again, not because I was surprised, he'd done variations of this move before, but because this time the model was correct, down to the decimal. Mistake was his. He'd ignored my flagged Slack messages, refused to read the updated brief, and then proceeded to swagger into a call unprepared like a toddler entering a spelling bee with boogers as every answer. But I didn't speak up. I didn't correct him, not in front of the client, not in front of his dad's golf buddy who was lurking quietly on the call. I took the hit, smiled through it, said I'd double-check the numbers and send a revised deck by EOD. I even apologized for the confusion. Confusion, what a convenient little word. A tidy cloak to cover 1,000 acts of professional negligence. When the call ended, Carter didn't thank me, didn't acknowledge the save. He leaned back, sipped his matcha latte like it had been a long day for him, and said, "These guys are lucky we're patient. You handled it okay, though. You're like our mascot or something." Mascot. That one lodged in my ribs like a toothpick snapped off in a bad steak. I wasn't even sure I'd heard him right until an hour later when I walked past the break room and heard him retelling it loudly to two other team leads while shoveling avocado toast into his mouth like it owed him rent. I swear, Amanda's basically our emotional support golden retriever. Just loyal and always cleaning up. Laughter. Actual laughter. One of them barked for effect. That was it. That's when the hurt curdled. That's when the quiet loyalty I'd been gripping like a comfort blanket turned to something else. Not rage. Rage burns out. This was cleaner, sharper, like frost growing in the corners of a window pane. I walked back to my desk and reopened the folder. The one I'd labeled Op Plan Personal, started organizing it, timestamping Slack threads, saving PDFs of outdated briefs I had updated, receipts, threads, screen recordings. Everything backed up to a private drive with redundancy so airtight I could have sold it to the Pentagon. I didn't just document, I indexed. Every mistake Carter pushed onto someone else, every correction he claimed as his own, every casual jab at my organizational instincts or mascot energy. I logged them all, built a little archive of humiliation, clinical, emotionless, ready, and I didn't stop there. I started listening more carefully during meetings, watching the way others flinched when he spoke over them, how junior devs glanced at me like I was the human fire extinguisher for Carter's dumpster fires. I started noting which clients would email me directly after Carter's calls to say, "Hey Amanda, can we just clarify something he said?" I smiled, replied kindly, logged it, because I wasn't just building a folder anymore. I was building a case. The kind of case that doesn't scream or storm out, the kind that waits, that listens, that walks into the room with a smile and leaves it with the floor plan redrawn. Let him call me a mascot, let him laugh. Mascots don't usually get promoted, but they do know the whole playbook. The email from HR came wrapped in corporate vanilla. As part of our ongoing commitment to operational excellence, we're launching a confidential initiative to better understand team structures and collaboration health. Translation: someone finally noticed the circus was on fire and wanted to figure out which clown was holding the gas can. They called it the org health survey. Everyone else rolled their eyes. I didn't. I forwarded the email to my personal inbox and highlighted 3 sentences that told me exactly what I needed to know. 1. Responses would be anonymized. 2. Feedback would directly inform future leadership structures. And 3. HR was coordinating with legal to assess managerial risk exposure. Well, finally, I clicked the link. And for once, I didn't sugarcoat a damn thing. I didn't name Carter yet, but I made sure the examples were detailed enough to draw a glowing silhouette around his incompetence. Manager routinely fails to review contract scopes before submission. High-value clients have repeatedly escalated project miscommunications. Team members report contradictory directives issued within hours of each other. When it asked for suggestions on improving collaboration, I offered this gem: assign authority based on competence, not proximity to the CEO's sperm. I deleted it, then rewrote it, then deleted it again and settled on create clearer accountability chains that prioritize expertise. Diplomatic, deadly, but I didn't stop at the survey. A week later, I dropped into legal's office under the guise of following up on a compliance flag. Melissa, a mid-level counsel with the patience of a monk and the sarcasm of a bartender, looked up from her monitor. "You again," she said. "Who'd Carter throw under the bus this time?" I shrugged. "Just a pattern I think someone should be aware of." I handed her a few anonymized samples, emails, timestamped project logs, infamous invoice he greenlit without reading that nearly cost us a renewal bonus. Melissa raised an eyebrow. "You're not naming names." "Not yet," I said. She nodded, slid the folder into her drawer, and said, "Let me know when you're ready to make it official." It wasn't just legal. I started investing in the people Carter ignored. Took a coffee break with Devin from Analytics. Turns out Carter had publicly mocked his dashboard designs in a department sink. Shared a lunch table with Sana from Product, who whispered, "I swear he doesn't know what an API actually does." I wasn't gossiping. I was networking, quietly stitching together the map Carter thought he ruled. Because here's the thing about mid-level staff: they're the load-bearing beams of every flashy office pyramid. You piss them off long enough, and eventually the marble lobby starts to crack. Interns started coming to me with questions. Coordinators forwarded Carter's frantic 2 a.m. urgent emails with a simple, "Should we even do this?" I told them just follow protocol and made sure those protocols were written by me. Strategic detachment became my new emotional baseline. I no longer felt angry, not even tired. I felt surgical, like I'd stepped outside myself, watching Amanda the mascot turn into Amanda the architect. I didn't need revenge. I needed structural change, and I was designing it. At home, I updated my folder, renamed it Restructure V1. I even made a flowchart. At the top, clear, competent leadership. At the bottom, Carter, reporting line optional. "Let's call it Project Velocity," Carter announced with the enthusiasm of a Labrador discovering fireworks. He was pacing in front of the whiteboard, Sharpie uncapped and bleeding into the sleeve of his linen blazer, sketching arrows that pointed to nowhere and circles that contained absolutely nothing. The initiative? A total overhaul of our client onboarding process, designed by Carter for Carter, based on absolutely zero feedback from the team who'd actually have to implement it. No pilot, no data, just vibes. It'll be a game changer, he said. Just trust me. I nodded, smiled. Sounds exciting. Inside, I was watching a car barrel toward a ravine, and I was the one quietly removing the guardrails. He tasked me with coordinating project velocity across departments, which meant he wanted me to do the work while he hosted brainstorms that doubled as ego-polishing sessions. I said yes to everything. No pushback, no notes. I even added faux enthusiasm to my Slack messages. Great idea, Carter. We'll loop in product for feasibility. Loop them in I did, but with a caveat. This is Carter's lead. I'm here in a support role only, per his direction. That sentence became my talisman. I repeated it everywhere. In emails, calls, Teams, chats. I wove it into every update like an invisible watermark. This is his circus. I'm just the one making sure no one dies on the trapeze. And then I let it unfold. He blew deadlines, missed stakeholder briefings, sent contradictory specs to dev and design, then blamed them for not syncing. When the product team raised concerns, he told them to trust the vision. When legal flagged data compliance risks, he ignored them. I watched, took notes, let the wreckage pile in neat, time-stamped layers. Then came the call with Hennigan and Foster, a legacy client that accounted for 11% of annual revenue. Carter insisted on taking point. Just let me handle it, he said, rolling up his sleeves like he was about to sell a vacuum cleaner on QVC. He botched it in under 6 minutes. Misspoke about implementation dates. Promised API features we didn't have. Misnamed their lead account manager. When I tried to gently course correct, he muted me mid-sentence. Literally muted me, then called it a tech issue. I smiled at the screen, took a screenshot, closed my mouth. 30 hours later, I got the email. Subject line, follow-up from yesterday's call. It was from Julie Yates, Hennigan's VP of Ops. She'd CC'd our board liaison and the CFO. Amanda, we'd like to work directly with you going forward. Please advise on realistic timelines and requirements. We're confident you can steer this back on track, I replied formally. Looping in Carter, of course. No snark, just facts and action steps. 3 hours after that, Carter was summoned to the glass fishbowl of doom, aka the CEO's office. I watched him walk past my desk, brows knit in confused indignation like a golden retriever being blamed for a broken lamp it definitely broke. 15 minutes later, he emerged, flushed and scowling. You could have backed me up, he hissed near the elevators. I followed your direction, I said calmly. I was just in a support role. That night, I received a message from Julie. Just one line, thank you for your professionalism. The next morning, a sealed envelope appeared on my desk. Internal memo, hand-delivered. Inside, your discretion during the recent client escalation is appreciated. Your leadership has not gone unnoticed. No signature. But I recognized the initials in the watermark. I folded the letter, slid it into my drawer, then opened the restructure V1 file. The fail had been his. The framework, still mine. It started with a calendar invite. 50 minutes, no subject line, just touch base, from Meyer in HR. The kind of vague that usually means someone's getting canned or someone's about to get promoted, and HR wants to make sure they don't cry on the Zoom call. I accepted. Then opened the doc titled Restructure V1 on my private drive and waited. Maya popped into the video frame with her usual espresso-fueled grace and a faint smile that said I know more than I'm allowed to say. Appreciate you making time, she said. Totally informal, just gathering some thoughts. We're working on a preliminary draft of the org restructure. You've worked across teams, handled high-risk clients, done onboarding and ops and cleanup, frankly. You've seen the guts of this company more than anyone. So we figured, better to poke holes in it? I nodded slowly. Sure, happy to help. She clicked something on her end and a PDF loaded on my screen. Again, this is highly confidential. Don't even print it. I didn't blink, didn't speak. Just started reading. It was messy, tentative, like someone tried to redraw the plumbing of a sinking ship while blindfolded. Half the departments were realigned, some roles consolidated. A few strange power shifts. Carter's name still floated near the top, nested in a box with too many dotted lines, like they couldn't quite decide where to park him without setting off alarms. But that wasn't the part that made my breath slow down. It was the note in the margin next to my name, currently seen as central to stabilization. Possible anchor role, anchor. That word echoed like a dropped wrench in an empty garage. Maya was still talking about hierarchy charts, survey data, legal approvals, but I was already 10 steps ahead. This was the crack, the seam, the quiet, unspoken invitation to reshape the org chart. If I played this right, I wouldn't just survive the next phase, I'd define it. I do have a few thoughts, I said, voice measured, on reporting logic. There's some inefficiency built into the current layout. Be as candid as you want, she said. Nothing's final. I smiled. Noted. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a ghost in the machine, sending suggested edits as feedback, using neutral language, never leaving a trail that traced back to ambition. I reframed Carter's responsibilities as better aligned to operational execution under direct oversight, which is HR code for, let's put him in a sandbox with supervision. I didn't remove him, I repositioned him. I wrote, recommendation, team structure would benefit from direct line of sight to experienced delivery leadership, meaning he now reported to someone who reported to me. When legal flagged inconsistencies, I offered clarification. When finance asked about efficiency gains, I quoted timeline savings from when Carter was unavailable and I quietly took over. And when Maya circled back with an updated version, streamlined, anonymized, but unmistakably influenced, I didn't smile. I just said, looks cleaner. She tilted her head. You're okay with these changes, I nodded. If it improves delivery, I'm all for it, because I wasn't interested in payback anymore. I wasn't trying to be fair or noble or even kind. I was done patching leaks in someone else's boat. I was building my own damn ship. And this time, the helm wasn't going to be handed to someone who showed up with the right last name and the wrong skill set. The restructure wasn't just a draft anymore. It was a blueprint. And I knew exactly where to draw the exits. By week 3 of the shadow reorg, Carter smelled smoke. He just couldn't tell where the fire was yet. And like any cornered animal with a Wi-Fi password and executive access, he started to claw at anything that moved. The first sign, his emails changed tone. Gone were the half-baked one-liners and emoji-filled directives. Now it was bullet points, pseudo-deadlines, passive-aggressive CCs to people who had no business being looped in. Our previous discussion, which you may want to revisit, please ensure the Q4 roll-up reflects the new client tiers as I described yesterday. Thing is, what he described yesterday directly contradicted what he said the day before that, which contradicted what was actually correct. But I didn't argue, I just replied on it, then executed exactly what he asked, and saved the thread. That became my new ritual: obey the chaos. Document the contradiction, let him hand me the rope and make notes about the knots. He started calling impromptu syncs, 6 of them in 5 days, each more frantic than the last. Why is Dev saying the API spec wasn't finalized? Because you told them to wait. When did I say that? Here. I shared my screen, your Slack message from Monday. He blinked. Oh, well, just get it back on track. We can't afford slip-ups. Of course, I said, just following your direction. I used that phrase like a scalpel now. No bite, no sarcasm, just precision. It unnerved him more than open defiance ever could. By the second week, he started hovering, sitting in on meetings he used to ignore, making comments like, just want to make sure things aren't going rogue, while stealing glances at me like I'd suddenly grown fangs. During one strategy session, he interrupted my presentation to nitpick font size. It's too small, let's keep it client-friendly, yeah? I nodded, enlarged the header. Better? He nodded, smiled like he'd won a point. The smile of a man rearranging deck chairs on a ship he didn't know was already listing to port. Meanwhile, my folder was growing. Every mixed directive, every 2 a.m. Slack where he contradicted himself. Every hey, just go with your gut followed by a why didn't you get my approval? I logged it all with dates, context, recipients. Neat, unemotional, bulletproof. And while he spun in tighter circles, I finalized my edits to the draft reorg. Just one clause changed. Team realignment proposal. Consolidate delivery oversight under experienced strategic lead Amanda D. Carter R. to report directly into said role to ensure continuity and institutional knowledge retention. It wasn't a demotion, technically. His title stayed intact. His pay wouldn't dip. But structurally, he now flowed into me. One line, just one. Meyer and HR read it over the phone. You're sure? Yes. There was a pause. Then, it's subtle, that's the point. Because at this stage, I didn't want revenge, I wanted architecture. A structure that would endure long after Carter flamed out or flounced off to some VC-backed side hustle. One reporting line was all it took. That Friday, I walked into our weekly status meeting and watched him scramble to assert control over a team that no longer looked at him for direction. They looked at me, he felt it, and for the first time he stopped talking. Just stared as I wrapped up the call, thanked everyone, and logged off. Back at my desk, I opened the updated org chart. The version with final formatting, pending announcement. Carter's name was there, just one tier below mine, one line away. Funny thing about hierarchies, sometimes all it takes is a shift of inches to move mountains. The final version of the restructure hit my inbox at 8:12 a.m. on Friday, stamped confidential in red like it was a nuclear launch code instead of a long overdue map to sanity. There it was, clean and sterile like a surgical cut. Carter's name, positioned directly under mine. No drama. No commentary, just a neat little box that finally reflected the work that had always been mine and the accountability that had never been his. The message from HR was brief. We're rolling this out at the top of next week. Soft internal heads up only, announcement Monday, effective immediately. Translation: enjoy your weekend, but try not to throw a Molotov cocktail through the Slack channel. I stared at the screen for a long second, then clicked the file shut, powered down my laptop, and got ready for the company-sponsored happy hour. It was being held at that faux fancy taproom downtown, the kind of place with Edison bulbs, reclaimed wood, and overpriced sliders no one ever eats. It was also the exact sort of event Carter loved. Free drinks, inflated sense of relevance, an audience he thought was still laughing with him. I got there 15 minutes after start time, long enough to avoid the small talk, short enough to be noticed by the right people. Maya from HR gave me a quick nod from across the room. Melissa from legal raised her glass slightly. No one said anything about the chart, but I felt it, the undercurrent, like the air before a storm, full of static and fate. Carter was already 2 beers in, holding court near the patio. He was wearing that ridiculous salmon-colored button-down he thought made him look approachable, which in reality made him look like an off-brand resort manager. I stayed back, sipped my drink, let him have his spotlight. Then it happened. He clinked his glass against a metal railing for attention like he was about to deliver a wedding toast. The group quieted mostly out of politeness, not anticipation. So he slurred slightly, "Here's a fun idea. We should start trading managers like baseball cards. You know, like I'll give you Amanda and a bag of pretzels for someone who doesn't forward all my Slack typos to legal." Laughter. Not much. Just the shallow kind, the kind people give when they're too uncomfortable to stay silent. My face didn't change. I took a slow sip. Let the silence stretch just a beat too long. Then I smiled, soft, controlled, surgical. "I accept." That was all I said, no raised voice, no toast. Just those 2 words floating out into the hum of conversation like a flare in the night. Carter blinked, swaying slightly. Wait, what? By then the HR director was already walking over, tablet in hand, posture the corporate equivalent of a funeral procession. She didn't look at me. She didn't need to. She held the tablet up to Carter, tapped once and handed it to him. I saw his eyes scan the screen. Pause. Read again. The confusion was immediate. The slow unraveling, exquisite, his eyebrows furrowed. His lips parted just slightly. Then his gaze drifted across the table, past his half-finished IPA and landed on me. I raised my glass a quarter inch, no smile this time. He looked at his dad, the CEO, across the room who had clearly already been briefed. The old man didn't say a word. He just shook his head, slowly, not angry, not disappointed, just done. Carter turned back to the screen like maybe the lines would change if he stared hard enough. But they didn't because they were final, signed, filed, and waiting for Monday. His box was still there. But now it flowed into mine. One clean, quiet line, and I hadn't even raised my voice. The silence that followed my "I accept" wasn't loud. It was deeper than that, thicker, like the whole bar had fallen into a vacuum sealed with reclaimed barn wood and startup regret. You could hear the soft hum of the beer taps, the muted buzz of someone's phone vibrating on a polished concrete table. A fork clinked awkwardly in a half-finished plate of truffle fries. Carter stood there, mouth slightly open, beer sweating in his hand like it knew what was coming before he did. HR didn't say a word, just approached with the same quiet gravity you see in movies when someone walks across a courtroom to deliver the verdict. She extended the tablet like a communion plate. Carter blinked at it, took it. His thumb hesitated on the screen. For a moment, I thought he was going to pretend he couldn't open it, that maybe the file wouldn't load, or the Wi-Fi would glitch, or some mystical glitch in the cloud would save him. But the screen lit up like Judgment Day. At the top, in HR's lifeless Arial font, "Final internal structure, effective Monday." He scanned it. His name, still there, no title change. That probably comforted him at first. Then he followed the lines. Amanda D., Senior Director, Right Arrow Strategy and Delivery reporting to. COO below her, Carter R., Strategic Operations Liaison reporting to, Amanda D. For a moment, I saw the flicker of resistance in his eyes. That little boy inside the grown man, stomping his foot because someone dared to say no. The same boy who'd failed upward into every role he'd ever held. The one who thought charm could fix everything, and that leadership was just a louder form of delegation. His face drained like someone had pulled the plug on his bloodstream. He looked around, at the team, at the interns he never learned the names of, at the mid-level managers who now suddenly wouldn't make eye contact, at the senior staff who were already shifting back into their conversations, trying not to breathe in the radioactive fallout of a nepotism implosion. Then he looked at me. I didn't move. Then, like a broken compass trying to reorient itself, his head snapped toward the bar, toward the one person he thought could stop this. His father. The CEO was sipping a neat bourbon, watching quietly from the corner booth like a man who had just realized he'd finally run out of favors to give. Their eyes met. No words, no dramatic denial, no last-minute save, just one slow shake of the head. It wasn't disappointment. It wasn't anger. It was the look of a man who'd gambled on legacy and come up bankrupt. A silent acknowledgement that the old way had finally collapsed under the weight of its own laziness. Carter stood still, tablet in hand, like if he didn't blink, maybe the org chart would blink first. But it didn't, because it was real, filed, approved, immutable, and the woman he used to call his mascot now had his leash. Carter didn't say a word. He stood there, still clutching the tablet like it might explode, eyes bouncing from the screen to me to his father and back again. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Just a slow-motion malfunction of a man whose wiring had finally frayed too thin to hide. The room stayed quiet. HR didn't break the silence with sympathy or apology. She didn't offer a soft segue or a damage control line about transition support. She just leaned forward, tapped the corner of the tablet, and said calmly, "Effective now." That was it. 3 syllables and the air shifted. I didn't gloat, didn't smile, didn't say another word to Carter. I just turned to the bartender, who'd frozen mid-pour during the whole interaction, and raised two fingers, one more. The drink landed in front of me like punctuation at the end of a sentence I'd been writing for a very long time. I sipped, let it burn, let the victory settle in, quiet and earned. Then I grabbed my bag, nodded once at the room, and walked out. Left Carter standing there in a pink shirt and stunned silence, blinking like he'd just been mugged by a spreadsheet. The next morning, I logged in at 8:55 sharp for the all-hands call. My name was listed at the top of the agenda. The new org chart had already been distributed. No fanfare. Just a bullet point next to my name, updates on Q4 delivery, operational priorities, and restructure alignment. The meeting opened. Everyone was there, including Carter. His box sat near the bottom of the screen grid now. No video. Just his initials in that bland blue circle that Microsoft Teams gifts to the newly humbled. He didn't speak. He didn't even unmute. I led the call like I'd done 100 times before, except this time the authority was official. This time there wasn't a question of is she just covering, or is this temporary? This time the room moved when I moved. We covered the handoff plans, realignment of decision rights, client communications. I didn't mention Carter, didn't need to. The org chart spoke louder than anything I could have said. By 9:27 the meeting wrapped. People started logging off, offering quiet nods and thanks. Then, just as I was closing the tab, a ping, private message. From Jordan, a junior dev who joined 6 months ago. Quiet, sharp, the kind of guy Carter never noticed. Can't believe you did that with just one sentence. I stared at the message for a second, then typed back. I'd been writing it for months, and I had, line by line, thread by thread, receipts, charts, patience, and silence. It wasn't an outburst. It wasn't revenge. It was the quiet sound of power being returned to the person who'd earned it. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.